Welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Cabinet Policy and Resources Scrutiny Subcommittee. I'm Councillor Carl Jordan and I'll be chairing this meeting. Before we move on to the next agenda item, please note that this meeting will be recorded and please can you ensure that your mobile phones are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Can members and officers who are present in the chamber please use your microphones when speaking. When asked to raise your hand, can members who are virtually viewing this meeting raise your electronic hand? And members who are in the chamber, please indicate by raising the physical hand. We will not be scrutinising any item from the Cabinet Board this afternoon, so I'll move on to agenda item 2, which are declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest?
I can't see any indications, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. So agenda item 3 are the minutes of the previous meetings. Minutes are attached at pages 5 to 8 of the agenda pack. And if you feel that these are an accurate record of the meetings, can I have a proposer and a seconder to propose these meetings? I'm happy to propose. Can I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Percy.
We'll take the minutes as approved, Chair. Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 4, which is the emergency preparedness update. And again, these can be found on pages 9 to 16 of your pack. Officers, do you have anything additional to add to this report?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to just give a very brief introduction and some background to this report, and then Emma John from the emergency planning team will pull out a few key points for members, if that's okay, Chair. Just to let you know, members, the report that's in front of you today is a summary of activity on behalf of the emergency planning team over the last year. The emergency planning team in its current iteration has been in place since last March. So following the retirement of the Corporate Occupational Health and Safety and Emergency Planning Manager, Sean Burgess, who I know was known to quite a few of you, we had a look at the structure for emergency planning and health and safety. So we had a small restructure to ensure that the emergency planning team had its own dedicated manager post. The team is a small team, so as well as the manager, there are 5 other officers within the team, 4 of them qualified, 1 in training. But because of the scope and the increasing responsibility on this team, we really felt that the team needed a dedicated manager post. So Emma took up the post last March. Since then has been working with the team on quite a busy work programme given the size of the team. What you have before you is a look back over the last 12 months and a look forward over the next 12 months. So I'm not going to say anything else. I'll hand over to Emma now, who will briefly take you through some of the key points.
Good afternoon all. A couple of key points I just wanted to raise for yourselves. Is more that some of the work that we'll be taking forward over the next year will hopefully be a bit more involvement from yourselves. So we're planning to introduce MPT Prepared, which will be our scheme to help develop some community resilience. So we'll hopefully be approaching elected members over the next 12 months to start working with yourselves to make ward level community resilience plans, and to then help us write some community risk summaries on your wards as well, so that we're sort of enhancing our risk assessment process. So we're delving a bit more into what's in your wards capacity-wise, vulnerability-wise, and understanding some of the risk perceptions maybe of the people within your wards. The second point just to raise as well is that we'll hopefully be launching our new website this year. So we'll have some new developed pages on the main corporate website. It's been a long time coming. It's been a couple of years now. So yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you, Emma. Members, do you have any questions for the officers? Councillor Rob Jones, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sheena, and hello, Emma. Haven't seen you for a while. Congratulations on your new post. I do have a couple of questions on this item, particularly relating to page 13, specifically the forward work programme, paragraphs H and J. That basically talks about what you just said with member links, the development and launch of a new Talbot Council business continuity strategy. And Jay says a full review of the local risk register, ensuring it is aligned with the South Wales Local Resilience Forum, etc. Couple of points I have here. The business continuity and the risk register have been looked at continually since I've been an elected member. And there are difficulties in relation to keeping it updated and stressing the importance of continuity business plans with each individual department within the local authority. And I think it's important that members fully appreciate the different levels of business continuity plans. And how critical they are to the infrastructure and continuing operation of the council. If I just give one example, if there was a serious incident in relation to the Margam crematorium where we wouldn't have the ability to cremate, the business continuity plans would look at alternatives to ensure that bereaved families would continue to be able to deal with their lost loved ones. So I've got a couple of questions all surrounding that. How many departments do we have within the authority that require business continuity plans specific? I just mentioned Margam, but these may be questions that you may not be able to answer at this forum, but I certainly think it's important that members have this information. So how many departments need or require business continuity plans, and what percentage of them do actually have them up to date and operational? Because I know that many years ago there was a problem with business continuity plans not being updated, and some of them way out of date. And whose responsibility is it to ensure that the business continuity plans are in place and be updated? Is it the head of service? And who checks that these are done? Because I know that, again, the department, the emergency planning department, can give advice in relation to this, but I do believe that it's the department's responsibility to do that. And how often is the council's risk register audited? The reason why I asked that question is that recently in Cabinet Scrutiny, we evaluated the recent Audit Wales report that came to council, and I picked up on the fact that Audit Wales didn't think that the medium categorisation of business continuity plans was a true reflection of the accurate level of business continuity plans, and said that it should be increased. Sheila actually said that this was going to be done imminently. So I know that there's several questions wrapped around there, but if Audit Wales have picked it up, then we need to make sure that we are picking these up at ground level. And as I say, I appreciate you may not have the answer to all those questions, but I think it's important that we have this type of information, because if anything in one department ceases to exist, it could have catastrophic effects and knock-on effects in relation to other departments and their operation. So I'll leave it there for the time being, please. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. So I'm going to start answering some of your questions, and then I'll bring Emma in to answer what I don't answer, if that makes sense. Starting with a risk register. So that is updated and taken to CDG quarterly, and also reported quarterly to Governance and Audit Committee, and every 6 months by Cabinet. That But yeah. So that's on the risk register. In terms of business continuity plans, every accountable manager is required to have a business continuity plan in place for their service. So depending on the nature of their service and the critical delivery actions that they identify within their service, the business continuity plan could be a very short document, or it could be a very large detailed document. It will depend service by service. So every accountable manager is required to have a business continuity plan in place. In terms of how many have an up-to-date business continuity plan in place, I'm going to guess off the top of my head that it's a fairly mixed bag. It certainly was last time I looked. One of the reasons why we want to review the process is to make the process an easier process for accountable managers and also engage with them more. But Emma might want to come in on that particular point. In terms of who is responsible for ensuring that business continuity plans are in place, so the accountable managers are accountable for ensuring the plan is in place, but I would say every head of service and therefore every corporate director is responsible for making sure that there are up-to-date business continuity plans in place across their services. So Emma, is there anything you want to add in terms of business continuity? No, there isn't. So yeah, has that answered everything, Councillor Jones?
Yeah, more or less. But you can't, from what you've just said, it's so general, you can't put figures on those that have and those that have not. So whilst it's accountable managers, have we actually got an identifiable register of business plans that are in existence, identified the types of departments? Because to say all accountable managers stretches right across the county borough, and if you're saying some are as simple as one page, others could be quite complicated, particularly if there's a catastrophic fire in a school. Does that rest with the governing body? Does that rest with the head teacher? Is it there with the education department? I think it's so vitally important that we make sure that everyone is aware of these business continuity plans for obvious reasons.
So the business continuity plans are held on the Dragon system. That's where they currently are. But I'm just going to bring Emma in on the schools side, because it's been a specific piece of work has been carried out over the past year in relation to our schools to put in place good plans for each school.
So in relation to the schools, again, hopefully this year we'll have a lot more contact again with the schools. We're going to be launching the Resilient Schools scheme along with education, which will see us going into the schools and helping them develop their business continuity plans and school emergency plans. Previously, we have had difficulties doing this because the corporate style business continuity plan that we had didn't suit the needs of the schools. So we've been working over the last year to adapt that. So we should also have schools fully covered by business continuity. It won't get done in a full year because it all depends on the pressures on the head teachers, but it will have to sit with the head teachers to actually complete those. That's it from me.
Can I just finally, Chair, because I can appreciate others, Emma, for you, is Neil full fit and back, or is he retired?
Yes, Neil's back now, fighting fit.
Good, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Next is Councillor Helen Kerry-Clark, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's really following on from what Councillor Jones was talking about. Do you liaise with town and community councils? Because they're delivering some services in tandem with us as well, things like parks, cemeteries. Do you liaise with them and have plans with them should anything go wrong with their properties, with their assets?
The answer is no, we don't. So the scope of the emergency planning team is to ensure that the council itself is able to prepare for the council's response to an emergency situation. we can offer advice and guidance to other organisations, but with the proviso that we're a very small team. So our resources are best focused on the council. But no, we don't have a responsibility for covering if emergencies happen in other organisations within the county borough.
Can I just come back on that? Because like we've sort of outsourced our libraries to them. Do we not have any duty of care from that in that respect?
The council might, but the emergency planning team isn't established to provide a emergency response to other organisations. Our expectation would be that those organisations would have their own emergency business continuity plans in place. So that's not what this team provides. The council's wider responsibility is a different matter, and that's not something I can particularly respond to you on. I'm afraid that wouldn't fall within my remit.
I'm just asking because there would be a financial burden on us should something emergency happen in town and community council owned things, for instance, as cemeteries, what have you. That would have a knock-on effect to us. Would it not be in our interest to require them to liaise with us?
Yes, I'm sure it would be as a council, but the emergency planning team is established to ensure that the council is able to respond under the legislation that applies to the council as a first responder to major emergencies. So the emergency planning team isn't established to deal with situations happening across other organisations who will have their own responsibilities for responding to major incidents or having their own business continuity plans in place. That's just not something this small team would be able to cover.
Are you happy with the response, Councillor Clark, or do you have some sort of example we could discuss?
No, I'm just really concerned that should there be something that requires an emergency response from a town or community council, for instance, libraries or community centres or what have you, it would have a knock-on effect on us and we would be expected to come in, I think. And I just worry that sort of financially we could be on the hook, if you like, for emergencies because we don't require town and community councils to feed in to us on these things, because we have, like I say, with libraries, we've outsourced them to community councils, but aren't they our books?
Sheena's going to come back in, Councillor Clark, okay?
Right, sorry, Councillor Clark. There may be confusion around the title of this team. So the emergency planning team is established to respond to very specific incidents. So it's established under the Civil Contingencies Act. If there was a major incident, so a major incident is something that, for instance, the fire service might declare or the police might declare. So that could be I don't know, let's say a tanker explosion or a train crash might be described as a major incident. And the council is classified as a first responder under the Civil Contingencies Act and therefore has statutory responsibilities under that act. So primarily the emergency planning team is there to make sure that as a council, we are prepared for incidents like that. The emergency planning team isn't there for anything that could be described as an emergency, and we use the term emergency loosely. They respond to emergencies that are defined in statute. They're a very small team, so they cannot cover anything and everything across the council. Now, the things that you're talking about, yes, are things that the council would be interested in and would want to step in on. I think what I'm saying is this small bit of the council wouldn't be the bit of the council that would be doing that. So when it comes to libraries, that would be something probably that the Director of Education would be concerned with and stepping in to respond to. When it comes to finances, we've got Hugh in the call, so our Chief Finance Officer would obviously be concerned from a financial perspective, but it wouldn't be this tiny team over here which is there for something very specific. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think it was the use of the word fire by Councillor Jones. I just thought, well, if there's a fire at a school, there could be a fire in a library, a landslide in a cemetery, or what have you. So that's where they come from. But like you said, there are these responsibilities with other departments. Is that covered anywhere? You know, the feedback for these should an incident happen, and the knock-on effect for the council.
So the council's risk register will detail what as a council are deemed the greatest strategic risks for the council, and there are mitigating actions and plans in place to offset those risks. And then every department has its own risk register as well, so we'll have thought those things through. So some of the things that you're talking about may be covered in those risk registers. I don't imagine as a council we have plans in place for absolutely anything that could occur, but there will be plans in place for what are deemed to be the most significant risks facing us as a council.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Clark? Brilliant, thank you. Next is Councillor Sean Percy, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd, thank you. Yeah, I've just got a few specific questions in relation to the 23-24 programme of work. Firstly, there's reference there in item C and D about developing site-specific terrorism evaluation plans and security action plans and hostile vehicle mitigation. I'm just curious as to the extent of that and what areas are covered by those plans. Obviously, I can imagine, for example, principal town centres, but be really interested to understand the extent to which those plans exist. And then I have a question then relating to the 24-25 programme of work. And there is item E, delivery of civil contingencies exercising learn development programme. I can understand Cala gas exercise. I'm not sure what the next two items are or relate to, and I'd be interested to understand what they mean. Diolch.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Emma's going to come back to you on that. Thank you.
So in relation to the site-specific terrorism evaluations and security plans, I can't actually say on here where they're for. That's not because I don't know, it's because it's a security issue with it. So I can't actually say that on here, but please be assured we have got stuff in place or things are being developed at the moment with the likes of South Wales Police and the ambulance service. So there is stuff in development or there is pre-existing stuff, but I can't say on here where. In relation to the exercising and learning and development programme, this will be something new that's coming out over the next year or so. And in relation to the two specific exercises, MPT Connect and Exercise Sotiera. So MPT Connect is an internal exercise that's being carried out monthly at the moment, and I think it's going to continue to stay monthly. We alternate it each month. So month one it's a phone call to CCTV to get them to practice the initial notification process. So it's to mimic what they could likely receive from South Wales Police or Mid and West Wales Fire and Rescue Service, just to keep them up to date and competent on dealing with those particular phone calls. The second part to that particular exercise also then involves our strategic duty officer team. So it's to then test then the further notification of them every other month to get them to respond to essentially fake requests for strategic coordination group calls, which is the call that our directors and heads of services would be expected to join if there was a major incident and they needed to team up with South Wales Police Fire Service to deal with that at their level. Exercise Sortiera then is our internal rest centre exercise. That's going to be yearly. We have just carried that out in October last year, and it's just to test and exercise our rest centre response with social services and transport. That's it for me on that one.
Do you want to come back on that, Councillor Percy?
No, happy with the responses there, Chair. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Alan Llewellyn, please.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me come in under the scrutiny section. I actually, Emma just touched on the internal rest centre exercise in an answer to Sean now, and I was just going to ask, because I remember when Emma led the members' seminar, which was very informative during the last year, I think it was a question I actually asked about, you know, how up to date is our register or awareness of emergency centres? And, you know, do we know if we have a good coverage across different communities? Because obviously, more often than not, these emergencies are not predicted, however much we prepare, and responses need to kick in quite suddenly. So, you know, in terms of how much of a coverage do we have of potential rest centres and emergency centres? Do we have good access to key holders? And how geared up are some of the voluntary organisations that are mentioned in the website, emergency planning team website? So, you know, Red Cross, local Red Cross, WRVS. I mean, Helen mentioned community councils earlier. Well, obviously they manage a lot of community centres, and you know, we need to know if their key holders are available if something like this happens. And although we had that seminar last year, is there more that we can do to help with local member awareness? Because if something happens, you know, it's very often the local member who gets a phone call in the middle of the night, sometimes even before the police. You know, I know from experience of when landslides and floods happen and so on in my own area. So, you know, the more backing we can give to local members to know what they can do and how they can access help. You know, sometimes it can be difficult for local members, say, to get through to 686868 out of hours. If there's a lot of flooding, local members can be on the phone for as long as anybody else trying to get through to contact. There isn't an easy answer to this because they're complex situations, but if I could just pose those questions and ask what consideration has been given to them. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Emma's going to come back at you.
So in relation to our rest centres, the register is up to date. Our main rest centres, the primary ones, are the leisure centres that we have with Celtic Leisure. There's a couple of additional ones which are quite large community centres, but we tend to focus more on the leisure centres because they tend to have a 5-mile radius between the majority of our communities, and some of them have some crossover as well. So we can interchange and use different rest centres or leisure centres, depending on exactly where the incident is, whether it's potentially affecting that rest centre as well. We are going to be doing another review of those again this year with social services, just to make sure that the facilities within those centres are up to scratch and what we need for social services to be able to implement a rest centre. So that will include things such as like Wi-Fi access, phone signal, because during the exercise that we did do back in October, we did find some issues with Wi-Fi signals and phone signals. So just to give you a bit of a flavour for some of the issues that we have found by doing our most recent exercise. In terms of the key holder relationships, the Celtic Leisure have been fantastic and they answer the calls immediately. We tend to have a list of about 5 key holders per leisure centre. So if we can't get hold of the first one, we can usually get hold of somebody else quite quickly within their sort of line then on there. In relation to the voluntary services that also support at the rest centres, again, the relationships are good with them. whilst other local authorities do also use them as well for emergencies, so we do have to be aware if there is something quite large scale going on across the whole of South Wales, there may be some pressure put on there. But most of the time, our own local authority has been able to cover the needs of those in the rest centres without having to bring the likes of Red Cross into it. I think the exception was with the skew and floods, where we did need an extra bit of manpower there to help sort of overnight with the rest centre. So I hope that answers your questions in relation to the rest centre side of it. And then moving on to the local elected member awareness and what they can do to help as well. We are looking at doing some more seminars, hopefully yearly, just so we can keep that sort of contact and awareness going. With the launch of the MPT Prepared scheme as well, we're hoping that'll put us back in more contact with the elected members, so that you can almost have that one-on-one contact with us then to look at doing your own ward level plans, where you can tie in responses, how we can make sure that it's working better with the emergency services and things as well then. So I'm hoping that answers that question as well.
Thank you, Emma. Deputy Leader, are you happy with that?
Yes, thanks for those responses. I'm quite keen that we can do more work on the sort of ward level, because although, you know, there might be a leisure centre within 5 miles, but if somebody's actually undergoing an emergency at the time, they don't necessarily, they can find it difficult to travel that far, or, you know, they've got other family commitments, you know, people they need to look after and so on, and travelling that sort of distance isn't always an option. So I think that, and I realise, you know, with the size of the team and everything, you can't be there for every eventuality, but the more I think that we can communicate via local members and possibly community councils and so on, to see if there are local responses that can kick in as well, because very often that's what sort of happens. You know, the local rugby club will open up, or the local community centre will open up, you know, and people will pitch in, but, you know, so the more that local members can be kept in the loop about what are good responses, the better it would be, I think. Thanks.
Thank you, Leader. Deputy Leader, sorry. Councillor Rob Jones, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Been listening to the debate and perhaps the lack of oversight that we've had in this area. Gone are the days when we used to have a resilience committee, which was a standalone, made up across party, that had oversight directly with emergency planning. You know, in years gone by, it used to be a joint resilience committee with Swansea and ourselves. I was wondering, as Nolwen is in the chamber, is there something, if you're asking for more member involvement, whether it is something that we could look at or consider, so we do get more member engagement? You know, I've got 2 level 1 coma plants in my ward, and there are only 5 throughout the whole of West Glamorgan, or there was. I know there's been reclassification now. Is that something that is on your radar, Nolwen?
Thank you, Councillor Jones. It wasn't on my radar. I hadn't heard that you had a resilience committee before. It wasn't something that was in place in Carmarthenshire either. So interested to hear that you used to have a resilience kind of committee made up of cross-party membership. So I'm certainly prepared to have a look at that, Councillor Jones, to see what merits and benefits can bring, ensuring that we don't add another tier of maybe work onto what is already a stretched team. But I'm sure we can look at how that was set up before and see what we can take it moving forward. Councillor Jones, so happy to look at that.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm more than happy to have a meeting over that if you so wish.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I do believe that us as members of our wards, we know exactly where our risks and our hazards are, and if eventuality it does happen, I think we could help the officers by supplying them with possible places that residents could go to if that catastrophe does hit us. Thank you. I can't see any more questions. So just going to inform you that this report is for information, and therefore we'll note the report. Moving on to agenda item 5, which is pre-decision scrutiny. There are no items on the Cabinet Board agenda in public for scrutiny today. So moving on to agenda item 6, which is the forward work programme. Again, this item is just for noting, unless members have any comments or questions to bring to the officers. Thank you. I can see no questions from members. So moving on to agenda item 7, which are urgent items. There are none. I'd like to take this opportunity to close the meeting this afternoon and thank you for your participation, and have a nice afternoon and evening. Thank you very much.